Hey everyone, my name is Matt. Welcome to my backyard. So I have been meaning to do a video on this guy here, my Mini Skidsteer, for a while. Actually, since I got it, I said I was going to do a video talk about why I got this kind of style of machine and why now was why I bought one. Or I guess that was 6 months ago. But I think it's going to work out a little better now because I have, 6 months of use with this thing, so I can share a little bit more about my experience with all of that. I do have to do some stacking and stuff today, so I'm going to take care of that. It is probably one of the last really cold mornings here in Minnesota before we hit some serious spring weather, so the ground is still frozen. I don't have to worry about tearing up my lawn like I normally would doing something like this in the spring. So we're going to do some stacking while I talk about why I got this machine or this style of machine and what kind of progressed me to this point of actually buying one. And then after that, I'll talk about the machine specifically. So if you only care about the specific details of the machine, I'll leave you a link in the description to the time where you can skip to just hear about the machine itself. So I have been putting off some stacking and reorganizing pretty much all winter. I have this elm log here, which I cut back in the fall. That's been sitting on here. That needs to be stacked for real. And I also need to reorganize things and restack a few things now that I've sold through a lot of the slabs in these stacks. So this stack, for example, is quite a bit shorter than it was originally. Here's how it used to look. This maple log has decreased in size quite a bit compared to how it used to be. I only have 3 slabs left from that log. And back around here, this one is about half gone. So my plan today is to reorganize a little bit. So these ones are 8-footers, this is 10, and then the one in the back there is 6. This guy that's going to be stacked is, I think, 8 and change. So I'm probably going to end up putting this guy here on this stack and maybe moving this stuff somewhere. I don't know yet. I'll figure it out as I go. But as I get going here stacking, let me tell you about why I waited so long to buy a machine. So I thought I'd start off by telling you a little bit about my history as far as the lumber side of my business goes and sort of my progression there, which has eventually led me to the point of owning a machine like this. So I started selling lumber about 8 years ago. I was selling stuff that I was drying myself, so I was buying lumber in bulk from a local mill, drying it myself, and then turning around and selling it. And I was also selling lumber that I was producing myself. So I started doing that, and I quickly realized I needed an actual place to store all this dried lumber, so that is when I built my shed. I started selling lumber, and about a month later, I invested the time and money into building a shed so I could warehouse all of this inventory that I was having. Inside the shed, I put a pallet rack, and with that rack, as well as some of the vertical storage in there, I could inventory about 1,500 board feet at a time that I could sell through. So at that time, my biggest source of leads for sales was Craigslist. I had a Craigslist ad that I maintained, and I generated leads from there. Now, the primary customer that I had then was mostly hobbyists and smaller shops, one-man shops that might be doing furniture building on the side or as a small business. And because of that, most people wanted to come by and see lumber in the evenings. I found that was my sort of niche, I guess, that separated me from some of the other sources locally that only were open during normal business hours, which worked out really well for me too because I had a full-time day job. So I had most of the showings for the lumber on evenings and weekends, and that worked out pretty nicely. I could book a bunch of people at night and they can come through, pick out their boards, and then go make something out of those boards. I did that for a few years, and after a little bit I got laid off from my job, and I decided that I wanted to start making videos online full-time. Now, I didn't really have a whole lot of income from this business at the time, so I still maintained my lumber sales as a way to help me through that time and help produce some revenue so that I could actually live. Now, that year was also the year my son was born, so anyone with kids understands that once you start having kids, you have a lot less free time to do all these other little things. So the downside to the lumber sales game is the fact that it is very time consuming. It's very time intensive to actually make all these sales because it is a sales job. You need to follow up with all these leads, get them here, get them on their appointment, and hopefully they buy something. That's the other thing you consider too as you're doing these sales, is a lot of times some might only come by and buy maybe 1 or 2 boards. Maybe they might not buy any boards, and those appointments each take about half hour to an hour. So I started having less and less time for this, and especially less and less time on evenings and weekends, because that became my basically dedicated family time. I started to scale back and eventually make my lumber sales a lot more passive than they used to be. So I wouldn't really try to keep things in inventory. I wouldn't really worry about having stuff here all the time for people to look at. I wouldn't worry about actually listing things and trying to get them to sell. If people came to me from my existing customer base, or came to me because I knew that I had sold lumber in the past, then I would show them the wood. But yeah, I wouldn't actively try and go out there and move these things, because it was time intensive and I was busy focusing on other things in the business. So then a few years later, I built my bandsaw mill in the backyard, and I had a lot more lumber that I was producing myself. So I would dry what I had, and then I would have it for sale. I might announce that I had some wood available on Instagram, for instance, and I would sell through a lot of it, and then I would inventory the rest, and it would sort of trickle out until I sold everything that was there. So that was fine and all, but again, it was fairly time consuming to actually process all this wood, stack it, inventory it, and then eventually find buyers and sell it. So as I was doing that, I was also thinking about ways to make the sales process more efficient for me. So I started to offer pre-orders, since I was mostly just cutting slabs that people were mostly interested in. So the pre-order model actually worked out really nicely. That way, the person who was watching me cut the wood and really wanted that slab can guarantee that they can get it, and then they were just fine with waiting for it to be ready to go. And whenever it was dried and ready, they can come pick it up. And then that way I'm not speculatively drying things and hoping that they'll sell. Then I'll jump forward to last year. My buddy Eric and I started working together on several projects, and one of the things that he has is a vacuum kiln. The beautiful thing about that machine is it really reduces the drying time and makes the lumber sales process even more compressed, even more so than conventional kiln drying. So this allowed me to take the pre-order concept to sort of the next level, where if someone is interested in a particular piece of wood, I can have it dried and to them within, let's say, a month, depending on the schedule of things that Eric has to run through his kiln and my schedule of being able to get this piece of wood over to him to dry. So the nice thing about that model is then I don't have to actually inventory dried wood. That is the biggest problem with the whole sawmill thing, is that once you dry some wood, you have to have somewhere for it to sit in inventory. And that inventory spot really should be a temperature and humidity controlled environment, because this is one of the funny things about people's misunderstanding about wood and drying. Just because something was kiln dried to 6 or 8% or whatever they tell you, the moment that goes into an uncontrolled condition like a storage shed, that is essentially being stored outdoors, and you're going to be picking up moisture the whole time. So your wood that was dried to 6 to 8% sitting in someone's shed is going to be at 12% within a few months. So you essentially undo the kiln drying process, or the final drying process. Now, the one thing that this model does mean for me as a producer is that it becomes a little less on my time and becomes a little more of a priority thing that needs to get done. So I need a faster way of handling material onto and off of my trailer to be hauled over to be dried. And that's really where the purchase of this machine came in. So not exactly my best stack job. These were a little bit goofy because of the different lengths and where I need them to start and stop on the bases or whatever. So I think that's going to be about it for today. It is, it's getting a little muddy. I didn't really think about the whole, the sun will melt the ground kind of thing, even though it's 28 degrees Fahrenheit right now. So I think I'll wait till the morning to finish putting all the stuff back with the mini skid. As you can see, I started digging into the top layer because it is melting in the sun. So I will see you in the morning. Good morning, everyone. Happy Saturday. It is a beautiful morning. It's 26 degrees. The birds are chirping. It feels amazing. It's always funny in spring when you're like 26 or 30 or whatever, it feels warm. If it was like in the fall, this would be absolutely freezing, but I'm so used to the extreme cold, this is warm. Anyway, I'm gonna get back to work. So you saw me pull these out. These are already sold. They're gonna go in the pile. It's gonna go over to the vacuum kiln. And I think I'm gonna end up putting everything that was on this stack back where it was on top of this log. So this stack's gonna get pretty tall, and I'll have this open for longer stuff in the future. I'm just gonna leave that log alone back there. But I do need to pull these ramps out. These are the ramps that came with my old trailer. They're gonna go with the old trailer when that one leaves here. So I'm gonna get back to work, and you can get back to listening to whatever I was telling you about before I so rudely interrupted myself. So one of the areas that I'm not particularly worried about efficiency is the stacking process, because that is basically my recreation time. I can stack at my own pace. I can make my videos and be happy doing it, and I don't have to really worry a whole lot. But when someone wants to buy a slab that's halfway down a stack, and I gotta get that slab out of there, get the other slab stacked back there, and get that slab on a trailer and out of here, I'm not really making a video about that, so I can't justify a couple hours pulling out a slab. So with all that, now I'm really looking for something to allow me to move things around, you know, slabs and, you know, sub 1,000-pound things, the things that take the longest to move around more efficiently. Again, I didn't really care for this in the past because I had plenty of ways to move things around in my time. I could stack things really easily with my trailer. That worked out flawlessly and perfectly. That's one of the things I try to show on this channel, is moving things and doing things in creative and unique ways to make some seemingly impossible tasks pretty approachable. So even for, you know, stacking slabs like this is something that my dad and I would do together. For these slabs that aren't super big like this, it would be a fun way for us to spend a couple hours together, just rearranging the backyard, moving some slabs around, and bringing things into the house to dry. So when he came to visit, we would have a sort of guaranteed father and son time that we both really enjoyed. So with this evolving business model, I needed something that would be able to help me out immediately and not have to worry about waiting for another person to come help me. That's sort of the other reason why I've never really had a need or a reason to buy a machine, is the amount of time this thing would sit idle, because I don't do this every day. I might need to move something only a couple times a month, if that. So with a machine, I knew it was just going to be sitting around a lot of time. And machines that sit around a lot are not usually all that reliable. So you end up, you know, cussing, trying to get it to start when you should be working. So that brings me to my sort of idea as I was thinking about what to buy. So I had never really given a whole lot of thought to these mini skid steers because I didn't really know a whole lot about them. I knew I did not want a full-size tractor. That is just too big for the space I'm in. A full-size skid steer also is too big. So I started looking seriously at these mini skid steers, and I was actually really surprised with what they can do. So first off, just like the tractors and skid steers, they are very versatile because they have a lot of different attachments you can put on them. I knew that if I were to get a machine, I need to get enough attachments and have enough things for this machine to be doing so that it does not sit idle all the time. Otherwise, it would. I also needed something small and maneuverable. I'm on a 1/4 acre. The driveway that I work in is about 30 by 30. And when you have trailers and wood and logs in the space already, you don't have a whole lot of room to drive around in a machine. So something like a full-size tractor, which is at least 12 feet long, would not work at all here because you wouldn't be able to go anywhere with it. Now this machine would also need to be stored in my shed, so I need to be able to have this thing actually fit in there. So these mini skid steers, they are versatile, they're maneuverable, and they will fit in my shed, which is a nice combo. And another really great thing, for me at least, with the mini skid steers is the fact that you're just riding on them, standing behind them. So for moving around unpalletized things like I am, moving around slabs, you're getting on and off the machine a lot. That's going to be a lot more convenient than trying to climb in and out of a normal skid steer. All right, so that should clean things up a little bit back there. That's nice. The lawn's a little torn up, but yeah, at least I don't have any super big deep ruts like I would if it was you know, super wet out. So let's talk about the machine. So first I thought we'd just run through the stats of the machine and then we'll walk around and talk about this particular machine, as well as take a look at the attachments that I got with it. Okay, so this is a Vermeer s800tx. This happens to be a 2013 model. They discontinued this particular one, and they've kind of changed their product line a little bit. But this would be like probably like a mid-range, mid-size mini skid steer. In the more recent years, these have become more popular, and they've gotten bigger, which is interesting in itself. So the total length of the machine from back here to up front here to the attachment plate is going to be 7 feet. The track width is 40 inches, so pretty narrow track, and the empty weight of this thing as it sits right now is right around 3,000 pounds. The rated lift capacity on this is 840 pounds, so that is, the rating on that's kind of interesting. So there's a little bit of fun math going on there. So that rating is going to be with a 175 pound operator, and of course this rating is going to depend on like what kind of load you're actually picking up. Because if you have a load that is sticking out past the machine, it's going to have a lot more leverage on you than if it was really close up to the machine. So 840 pounds is rated at a 35% of the total tipping load, which is 2,900 pounds on this machine. Now inside of here, you have a 35 horsepower Kubota, I think it's a V1505 diesel engine. The fuel tanks are back here, so you have two 7.5 gallon tanks, which are linked, so you have 15 gallons of total fuel capacity. And here's my favorite feature of this machine: dual cup holders. So up here on the controls, we have a sort of 2 joystick setup with this little handhold thing, so you can kind of rest your palm there and operate the joysticks. You have the motion control of the machine, and then you have the boom control of the machine over here. These are the levers for the high flow and low flow hydraulic auxiliaries, whichever attachment you have hooked up. If it's using hydraulics, over here you have your glow plug button for preheating the engine, and you also have a 12-volt power outlet over there, you know, for plugging in your cell phone. Keys on this side. The only kind of weird thing that takes some getting used to is reverse on here, so it is inverse. So if I pull this back and then go this way, the machine's going to go that way. But it doesn't really take a whole lot of getting used to. This, you know, raises your bucket up and down, and you got the throttle over there. So as far as access goes, I've actually been pretty surprised with how easy it is to get to, you know, the things you need to be at to maintain stuff. So this pops open, you have your fuel box right here, and you got filter there and coolant there for the radiator. That's kind of nice to get those pads too, so yeah, when you're bouncing around on there, it doesn't hurt too much. Now over here on the engine, it's also really easy to get at and get access to. So I can pull the hood off. And then what's nice is these side panels come right out. Except I think I have the boom down too far for this. Yeah, let's pick that up a little bit. Oh, there we go. So both panels on both sides come out, so that gives you access to the engine on 3 sides. So here is the exhaust side. It's a leaf. And this is the, I guess you call it the fuel side. So there's all the fuel components down in there. And your air intake and stuff like that's over here too. But you can see with this setup, now you have pretty decent access to the engine if you need to actually work on it. Now for transport, you have a D-ring in the front to help secure it, as well as 2 kind of chain slots back in here at the rear of the machine. Right in here, so you can hook a chain in there and secure it. There's also a lift point up here on the boom in case you want to use a crane and lift this thing and bring it somewhere. So next, let's talk about the machine itself and the specific condition of this thing. So as I mentioned, it's a 2013. This is a used machine I bought it with 1144 hours on it, and it has 1164 hours on it now. So I put 20 hours on it in the 6 months that I've had it. As far as fuel usage goes, I have used probably about almost 15 gallons at this point. Let me point out some of the things that are wrong since it is used. So it of course has the typical kind of wear and use issues. You got, paint problems and a few wear spots here on the platform where you stand. You got my son who likes to write all over my stuff. The only real, I guess, problem with this thing is at one point someone who owned this pushed a little too far and damaged the boom. So you can see there is this plate here that's been welded on as a repair, and this has been welded back together here. And they have welded both sides, although they didn't put a plate to fix this side or reinforce it, but I'm not really too worried about it. I don't plan to push this thing too far, and this is probably, at least this side at least, this is stronger than it ever was before. Now I've had one problem that I've had to fix, which I'll talk about in a second, and I have one ongoing problem that I do need to maybe address if I really feel like it, and that has to do with the fuel tanks. The tanks are linked by a tube, and that tube tees off into the engine. There must be a blockage on that side because the machine only seems to be drinking from this tank. So in the middle of winter, as I was using this machine, the fuel gauge is on that side. So it says I have about a half a tank of fuel. And what ended up happening was this tank was drained completely and ended up running the engine dry, which if you haven't never run a diesel engine dry, it's not as easy as just putting diesel back in it and it starts back up again. But it's not a huge concern to me because I can just open this thing up and look in it, and I don't put that many hours on it, so it's not a huge deal. This thing's still half full. But something weird is going on with those tubes where they're not linked up completely or something, so that's just a small minor issue. Now the only mechanical problem I've had is with that guy there, the fuel shut-off solenoid. So luckily enough for me, I was snow blowing my neighbor's driveway. The machine just cut out and I wasn't really sure what was wrong with it. It kept blowing the fuse that this thing was connected to, and luckily enough, my neighbor whose driveway this thing was stuck in works with a guy who is familiar with these engines, and he says probably that thing. So at least it's a very easy fix. There's just 2 bolts on there and this component's $50. So really quick and easy fix, and haven't had any problems since. So I should be good with my replacement guy in there. Let me put this guy back together, and then we can go through the attachments that I got as well. So these first 2 attachments are what the previous owner had with the machine. I did buy the machine from a dealer, so this was a trade-in that they had at some point. So the previous owner used the machine for concrete work. So, you got some good amount of concrete just chilling in this bucket that I could probably clean up at some point. But this bucket isn't in super great shape. You can see they were using it without a cutting edge, so the front edge there is pretty well worn. But luckily enough for me, I don't really care that much about the bucket. I don't do dirt work. I'm using it as basically a glorified wheelbarrow, so I can move firewood around with it, or sawdust or things like that. I'm not digging or doing anything crazy with it, so for my uses, this is fine. I wasn't really even looking for a bucket originally, but I'm glad that it kind of came with this one because it's been pretty handy. So the other attachment that came with this machine, since concrete work, is this demolition hammer, or breaker, or hydraulic jackhammer. I have been meaning to sell this since I bought the machine to help recoup some of my costs, since I absolutely do not have an actual need for this. But I don't know, it's still cool though. If I needed to break up some concrete, I'd be set. So second most used accessory, which you already see me use, are the 42-inch pallet forks. I bought these new from the dealer with the machine. Basic forks, nothing crazy there. Okay, I'm gonna grab my most used attachment. So this is a 48-inch snowblower by FFC. So this is the one thing I bought that would guarantee more hours get put onto the machine. It's kind of funny that you gotta spend more money to like actually use something, but this has been amazing. At first, when I saw like the price tag on these things, I was really surprised and shocked, to be honest. But then I got the thing and I saw it in person, and I realized like this is no joke snowblower. This is some serious stuff. So the sides are made out of 1/4-inch plate. The impeller, the fins on there are 3/8. This is also 3/8, and the whatever the augers are 1/4. So it's a beast of a snowblower, and it does amazing work. So this setup here has made my snowblowing a lot more enjoyable and a lot more productive. So in the same time, I can do twice as many driveways as I could before. So that's been really nice. I can add a few more neighbors to my my route. So what's really nice about this thing is that since it's hydraulic, I never have to worry about shear pins ever again. It has an overpressure valve on it, so if I do get something caught in the impeller, it just won't work anymore. And you can just reverse it, and that could help to dislodge something you get stuck in there. Although the first time I did use it, I got a block of wood stuck in there, right in the impeller, right in here, and I couldn't get it out even in reverse. So that was fun, but other than that, the times where things haven't gotten stuck, a full 2x6 goes through there. It doesn't make it through one piece, but it eats it. The chute controls are all up here, so if you're wondering what this box is on here, these are the chute controls. So those are electronic controls for the hydraulics. The chute controls are hydraulics, but then you have electronic controls. So this will make the chute go up and down, and this actually turns it left and right. So it's been pretty darn amazing. Well, look at the step. That's a step. And in case you're wondering on the weight of that snowblower, it's a bit over 700 pounds. And you can see how well the machine can handle a load that's that heavy. One addition that I made to the machine was to add this light bar on here, because I always seem to ended up snowblowing at night. I never actually ended up snowblowing at night this year, so I haven't actually used that light at all, but it's a fairly easy thing to add. So these are just bolts that are tapped into this plate here, and it's just a light bar from Harbor Freight. And for comparison's sake, there's my old snowblower, 30-inch cut width. A little bit bigger. And I also have this grapple for moving around small logs. It's one of the more annoying things to actually move around and load onto the sawmill or just move around is just smaller rounds that weigh, you know, several hundred pounds. It's not something that's a lot of fun, especially if it's like a weird crotch or something. With this, you can just come by, pick it up, and get it out of the way. And for loading small logs onto the sawmill, it's not something that I typically do, because I don't do a whole lot of small stuff, but this would be able to pick up and load some smaller logs that would be kind of annoying and tedious to pick up. Another task that I consider for this thing, which has been really nice, is for moving like the slab wood or those big offcuts. So stuff like this, it's kind of awkward. I mean, you can move it around with forks, but it's a lot easier if you can just grab it with the grapple and just move it wherever you need to. So for a lot of the offcuts and stuff that get kind of heavy, this would be really convenient for moving things around. This is probably the least used attachment I've had at this point, just because I haven't been cutting any small stuff and I haven't really doing a whole lot of sawmilling. I mean, besides that thing, which I have literally never used. Now the last attachment is this receiver plate. So the attachment is just literally a plate with the receiver in it, and I just added one of these multi-ball hitch things. This allows me to move around my trailers around the yard, or if I need to hook something, I guess I could do that. But that's also been really nice, being able to just kind of shuttle the trailers around, get them out of the way, get them where they need to go. Even if they have a log on them, it's super convenient, and it's a lot nicer than having to use the truck. So this machine makes a lot of this stuff actually a lot more fun, because I'll be honest, this is a lot of fun to drive around and do stuff with. There is, I guess, only one thing that I don't really like about this machine, and that it seems to be made for, let's say, like a normal sized person. So I'm not very big, I'm not heavy, I'm not tall. This thing is definitely designed for someone who, well, for sure is taller than me. So I'm 5'6", these boots probably make me a little bit taller, 5'7" or something. And I'm not tall enough to really see down and see what I'm doing. So for instance, when I'm using the bucket, I don't have a line of sight on the cutting edge of that bucket if I'm standing here. I gotta be up in the air a bit before I can see that. So if you're like 6 feet tall or taller, it's not gonna be a problem, but if you're shorter like me, you're gonna have pretty bad visibility as far as the bucket goes. The other one's not too bad, but the bucket is where I really see it, and because I don't use the bucket ever, I don't really care. Of course, my light weight makes me not a great counterbalance either, so as things get a little bit heavier, this thing does tend to have a little more bounce to it, because, you know, I'm 50 pounds less than what the operator rated thing is. So I think I'm gonna make some weight kits for this thing, just to bring up the weight a little bit and get that counterbalance up. Let's touch on pricing real quick. So the machine package that I bought was with I guess the package on the lot was the skid loader with the bucket and the breaker, and that was, I got that $17,000. I personally like the idea of buying one from a dealer just because they kind of see this stuff all the time, and they can go through it and do a little bit of tune-ups on it if it needs it, and at least be able to point out any issues that might be wrong with it. The other nice thing about buying the whole machine from a dealer is that you can kind of bundle on your other attachments, and you can potentially save some money there buying it all at once versus buying the machine and buying an attachment and buying another attachment down the road or something like that. So you have a little more negotiation power as your price tag, your total ticket price tag goes up. So the grapple, that one's got an MSRP of $3,000. I think I ended up paying around $2,500 for it. The snowblower, this is the most expensive and most ridiculous thing I ever bought, but I am so glad that I did, because this thing represents the majority of the hours on here. This thing has a retail price of $6,800, and I was able to get it just under $6,000, so you can save some money there. But this is like, that's a big investment right there. And then the pallet forks, you know, pallet forks and buckets are pretty cheap. Those are like $500 or $600. So I mean, if you don't have those, that's not a huge deal in the grand scheme of things. The receiver plate thing was, I got that afterwards. I got it from palletforks.com, I think. It's like Titan Attachments. It's $107 delivered to my door. I was like, oh, I can make my own little plate and put a receiver on it. I'm like, I looked it up. I'm like, I can't even make this for that little. So for $107 for the receiver plate, and then I got that ball thing at Harbor Freight. I think it was like $30 or something like that. But yeah, that's the pricing. So you can do the math and add up the out the door price for me plus sales tax. It was not a cheap investment, but I'm to that point now where it makes sense. And I guess lastly, why did I buy a Vermeer and not some other brand? Well, it just comes down to the fact that I was looking for a used machine, and there aren't a whole lot of these mini skid steers out there for sale. If I was looking for like a full-size skid steer, everyone, their mom has one of those. They've been made for, you know, 50 years or something like that. There's a lot of those machines out there that are used and for sale. These mini skid steers are newer, so there isn't a whole lot of them out there to buy used. So I was really limited to the actual selection of what I could actually buy, which was available for sale. So I was really limited to only a handful of options of ones I could actually buy. This one just happened to fit the bill of being roughly the right size and had depreciated enough to be at a price point that I felt comfortable buying. So I hope this video helped to kind of share my perspective on things, why this is sort of the best solution for me and has been working really well, and why I haven't bothered going down this road until now. If you are in the market or you're looking at getting a mini skid steer, if I didn't answer something you're curious about, feel free to leave me a comment, and I will try and answer the best of my ability, being someone who's not necessarily an expert in mini skid steers. But that's gonna do it for this one, I think. Thank you as always for watching. I greatly appreciate it. If you have any questions or comments on, I already said it, but mini skid steers, the sawmill, the lumber thing, anything back in the shop, please feel free to leave me a comment. As always, I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have. And until next time, happy woodworking.